So
It's
I
not live
printed off
yet.
my questions. Oh, it is live. I printed off
It's
my
not live yet.
questions, but I can't see that well. And I don't have reading glasses. So if I'm like this, squinting, you'll know why.
All
Okay.
right, we're live.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristin J. Dawson, and I am here with my friend, Jeff Wheeler. I met Jeff a long time ago, unofficially, when I read his book, and I thought it was amazing. And I had just come off of a string of really crappy reads. So I Googled him, and then I emailed him, and just have stayed in communication with him. And then I worked with him at Deep Magic because he was like, if this girl is going to stalk me, I'm going to put her to work.
You might as well put her to work, right?
That's right. And then so we worked together at Deep Magic, and I'm an author, and Jeff is an author of many books, a Wall Street Journal bestseller. I will say my favorite book is probably The Queen's Poisoner, and I have lent it to many people, but I have stalked them down and gotten it back because I love it so much. Jeff, why don't you give everybody like a normal introduction to you?
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for coming today. As Kristin mentioned, we've been friends for a long time. We help run Deep Magic or Easing for many, many years. I've written over 40 novels, mostly epic fantasy. And my top selling, when everyone asks, like, where do you start? I always suggest The Queen's Poisoner. But we're here today to talk about my newest book in the King Fountain series, which is about the famous Queen's Poisoner, who is Anchoret, and it's in the book Widow's Fate. So that's why we're here today. So that's Queen's Poisoner and the newest book, Widow's Fate, dropped yesterday.
Congratulations on your new book, baby Jeff.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I love the cover. In fact, my daughter, who's in college, when she saw my copy sitting on the couch, she's like, "Nice cover." She normally doesn't praise me for stuff. So,
well, I like it, but I also really like purple. So, yeah, I really like it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Widow's Fate. Just a little quick thing, and then I have more questions.
Awesome. So, after I wrote the original King Fountain series, I started writing some. I had so much fan feedback about Anchoret, the Poisoner. And so I started doing some prequel novels about her, just telling kind of her backstory, like where she came from, how come she ended up, being so cool and things. And so I was kind of satisfied with her story and just kind of let it go. But when I got the opportunity to work with Oliver Heber Books, I decided, they said, hey, can we, remarket those Anchoret standalone novels? And it would be really good if you wrote something new. So I was not expecting to write another Anchoret book this year, let alone write it and publish it. I have it published, in like 6 months, basically. It just really blew my mind how quickly it came. And so a lot of the story ideas in this King Fountain universe comes from, my history background in college, the War of the Roses in England. And so I looked at a little piece of history that I thought I might get inspired. And the story of this, widow that went missing, and where is she? And two royal brothers want her for two very different reasons. I thought it would just be a fun little kind of like mystery, and it ended up becoming so much more. So that's my little prologue to Widow's Fate.
Okay. So so you covered a lot right there. So with Widow's Fate, it's Anchoret. She's the main character, but she is introduced when she's older in The Queen's Poisoner. But okay, I'm like, where do I want to start with my questions here? So, okay, first of all, what order should people read them in? You think they should start with Queen's Poisoner and then go back to the Anchoret series?
Well, when I wrote the Anchoret series, I wanted them to be standalone, like they could be read individually. Because I wrote the first one after I'd written 3 of the other King Fountain books, and so I have them ordered, chronologically. And so that way, if people wanted to know, okay, how did she start off and become a poisoner? Then you could read that book, Poisoner's Enemy. But Widow's Fate, I wrote as a standalone. Like, you don't have to have read any of the King Fountain books. or the predecessor book to be able to get into the story and start figuring out the world, the magic, and how all of that works. So a lot of people, most of people do start with the Queen's Poisoner, but when I wrote this one, I really want to make sure that people wouldn't get lost if they jumped straight in with this one, and then they would begin to see the different connections as they read the other books, but not be totally like, I don't understand what this is all about. So it was designed and written to be that way.
And it's interesting because, of course, I read Queen's Poisoner first, but I think it would be really interesting to read the Anchoret story first and then read Queen's Poisoner, because it has it, but either way, it just adds so much more richness to the King Fountain series. Okay, so Jordan said, so excited for your book. I'm working my way through your books and now using your old reading order from your website. Have you updated your reading order on your website, or is it the same? Are you going to change it?
I have updated it within the last couple of months because I hadn't updated it in a while. Because people would ask me, okay, well, what's the chronological order of these different books? But that's different than the order I might recommend starting, right? If you want to read it chronologically with Anchoret's first story, then you would start in one place. So the way I designed my website is you could actually filter the reading order based on the order you want to read it in. And so that's how I have it. But there's now more options versus just one size fits all. There's different ways you can kind of slice the reading order. Because I have so many books now that people are just kind of confused. Like if they're just finding me, well, where do I start? Well, starting in King Fountain is not a bad idea. But if you wanted to look in King Fountain, you can order it by recommended or by chronological or which one has sold the most copies. So you can.
Yeah, and those are very different orders.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had mentioned that you're a history buff and that when you were, actually, let me go back. So when you were talking to your book publisher, they said, really like this Anchoret story, let's, create more books in this series. And then because you're a history buff, you went back and you did your homework and you picked out little things. So I read all the Anchoret stories before Widow's Fate, and I remember I emailed you with all of my questions of things that were missing. Did you ever refer to that when you were writing? That is such a guilty look. A guilty look. I'm going to go through and find that.
Well, your comments are really helpful, but when I'm trying to write a novel, I'm not just trying to appeal to the fans, but I got to appeal to like the character and the story, and I could write 20 books about an afternoon if I wanted to. I got to feel what's going to make the most sense and what's going to be the most exciting story.
I just want you to know I had the biggest questions. What was this? What happened here? And I noticed some of them were addressed, but not all of them.
Not all of them. I like leaving doors slightly ajar.
Yes, you do. I don't approve. Okay, so anyway, no, I do. I love it. I love it. Okay, so side note, I don't want to give away any spoilers. Like you've been really careful not to give like zero plot, really. Like you've shared have you noticed that? You've shared like zero plot about the story.
I know, because you really get upset when people do spoilers. So
I do, but when I'm like, share us a little bit about the story, like the plot is like, and anyway, so anybody who's read Anchoret stories, and if you haven't read this one yet, I was really, especially after reading some of your other stories, I did not expect this one to go the way that it did, and I was pleasantly surprised. That's all I'll say. But it surprised me. It was good.
I like the fact that after all these years, I can still surprise you, Kristin.
Yes, and you didn't get an angry text from me. So
yes.
Okay. So let me look at my notes. Okay, here's one of my questions. You came up with the concept of the poisoner via your historical research, but do you remember how the concept of Anchoret's personality developed? She reminds me a little bit of, okay, let me look at my notes here. Okay, I don't know if anybody here has read The Very Fairy Princess by Julie Andrews and Emma Walton Hamilton, but it's this girl and she loves to dress up and be pretty, but she also likes to climb trees and play in the dirt. Like she's a nuanced character. And Ankara is a lot that way because she grows up with a healer mom and she loves people. Like she's such a kind heart. But at the same time, she's essentially the king's fixer. So she will kill people and she has to be so clever and devious and see, like, you know, she has a special ability. I don't know if we'll share that here, but she has a special ability so she can read people's intentions. So she is able to make wise decisions, but still those decisions are really hard. And sometimes she has to do things that she doesn't want to do. So that she's such a unique character in the way she thinks and moves through the world. And I want to know how you came up with her personality, not her job, because I know you came up with it from historical research, but how did you come up with that personality?
I'm always inspired by historical things. I'm also inspired by, you know, like I have character studies, like photographs that I look at and stuff. And, you know, so there's somebody that was a famous actress back in the early 1900s that I've seen photos of this actress, and she kind of had this sad look, like very famous, but like you could tell there was something troubling her. And I kind of took that as part of my inspiration because I wanted, you know, one of the things that has appealed to so many readers about Ankret is the fact that, and this isn't a huge spoiler, but she has a sickness, right? She has problems, like in her line of work.
Yeah, she's dangerous. Chronic illness. We'll say
she has chronic illness, right? And so I think that has touched a lot of readers that yes, she can be very, you know, she can, you know, outsmart her enemies and stuff, but she has a human side and she has compassion for other people. And it was those photographs I saw of this famous actress back in the day that kind of it got the juices flowing, that it's like, wow, I think it'd be nice to have a character like that, somebody that you can tell just by looking at her, it's like there's more to the story. Mm-hmm. And you know, when the Queen's Poisoner begins, you know, she's at the end of her career. And so it's kind of like, you know, reminiscing of, all these days gone by. And it's been so fun to be able to write about those days, you know, not, you know, back when she was in her prime versus near the end of her career when this mm-hmm. illness is getting, you know, kind of getting the lead on her at the end. And so that's all I will say. I won't tell you who the actress is or share those pictures with you, but I'm inspired by lots of different things. And it was that particular actress that kind of inspired the look and the idea of her personality just by how you read somebody's face and learn about their story.
I feel like a lot of times we read these characters, and I like to even write these characters who are really fearsome. And I feel like these prequel Ankret series books, because she's at the peak of her career, they could really easily be just this really fierce, tough character, but she isn't. She is very nuanced all the way through. So kudos, that's very well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so before I lose this comment from Jordan Edwards, he says, or I'm thinking it's Jordan because I can only see a man on one side, but and then little Facebook symbols covering up the other individual. So I apologize if Jordan is female. But anyway, Jordan Edwards, which world do you prefer writing in?
Oh my goodness, right? Because I have a lot of different worlds. I've got Muirwood, I've got King Fountain, Harbinger. I have all these different things that I do, and it's each one is different and has kind of a different magic and a different way of doing things. Like when I started writing this book, it was like coming home, right? King Fountain, there's just something about it that's special to me, that it just, you know, I think I wrote the book in like 2 months, you know, really quick. And I think that's awesome. And I'm writing a new book right now set in a totally brand new world that I haven't really even shared much about. And it's harder, right? Because I have to do all the world building, and I have to, you know, there's certain things. So there's something comforting at, like, you know, putting on a pair of slippers you're used to, that made writing Widow's Fate so easy. because it was like, wow, I've walked this world so many times. I've traveled it. I know it. And the story just kind of flowed differently. But I like writing new things too. There's a challenge that comes with that as well. So, do I have a favorite? Probably not, because there's things I like about all the different worlds that I've created.
Oh, question then that you just made me think of. So with Widow's Fate, did you have to go back and read other books to prepare to get into that world and remember all the loose threads, because your worlds are layered and complicated?
I did. Like I felt like I couldn't write Widow's Fate without re-going through the book before that, The Poisoner's Enemy. I can't sit down and read my own books. That's actually excruciatingly painful for me, but I love listening to them. And Kate Rudd, who's been narrating so many of my books, her voice is like honey, and it just I had to do some traveling and stuff, so I like listened to it within like a couple of days, and it reminded me of some things, some character dynamics that I don't think I could have just. It's been a couple of years since I'd written it. I couldn't have gotten in, and it also gave me ideas like, oh, a little thing I hadn't remembered that I was able to weave into Widow's Fate by having gone through it. But I didn't go reread all the other King Fountain books. I just wanted to make sure that I chronologically I was being accurate with where the story was going to be.
And actually, that brings me up one other thing that I did not tell you I was going to ask. But the map, can you tell us about like that? That surprised me, and I loved it. Like, tell me more. How did that happen?
Well, it was something I decided on with my publisher, with Oliver Hebert Books and Tanya. I said, I usually have maps in my books, and we could go kind of recycle the King Fountain maps. But I'm like, Tanya, I've never done a map of King Fountain before. And so it's this little speck on this giant continent, and all we have are descriptions of, you kind of have to imagine there's this castle on a hill, there's this river, this giant enormous waterfall. Most of the town's built on one side of the river. There's this bridge. In the middle of the river is this sanctuary. I describe it all in The Queen's Poisoner in just a couple paragraphs, and people have kind of latched onto it. But it's kind of in my mind what it looks like. And I said, well, what if we hired an artist to do that? Well, before the artist can do it, I needed to come up with kind of a prototype, right?
Yeah,
so
that was my next question.
I hopped on the software Incarnate, which does maps. And I kind of, blew up the map of the world, just showing, okay, here's the river, here's the stuff. And then I just started laying out based on, in my mind, what it looks like and where things are. And, kind of here's the basics. But then I got to, explore places in the city, because most of the action of the novel takes place in King Fountain.
Yeah.
And all the other books, you travel to different countries, you go visit other places. And I said, wow, I think this would be really fun for the fans, that like almost the whole book takes place within the city. And why not visit some places you haven't been before, as well as places that are familiar? So I wanted to have that nostalgia of like, oh yeah, I know about this tower. I know about the cistern. I know about some of these places. Oh, but what about the Vintry Ward? What about some of these other places, these other quarters, the Hermitage? And I got to explore and invent some new parts of the city too. And so I worked with an artist taking my version of the map, and then she, of course, made it look awesome. And as soon as I posted it on my social media, I had fans like, can I get a high-res version of this? Because I'd like to make a poster out of this and hang it on my wall. So
yeah, no, it's a gorgeous map. You can tell that the publisher and the artist, they went all out on that, and I appreciate it. And even in past Anne Corrette stories, she's traveled all over. This is really the only one where she's pretty much in home base. So it was the perfect time to produce a King Fountain map. But anyone who's read any of the books will appreciate it. It's amazing. So well done on that.
Thank you. I just thought that would be so much better than recycling something. And I thought, what an opportunity. And I'm glad Tanya was all for it, and the artist did such a good job.
Yes. Okay, so I have a couple of other questions. Okay, I'm going to skip. We have some questions coming in from individuals. So I have one question here that says, You write killer thriller. Will we get more thrillers from you?
So I've written a 3-book thriller series, the Dresden Codex. Book 2 comes out in December, and the book 3 comes out a couple months after that. I have not decided whether I'm going to do more thrillers or not. It's still really early in the game. It was harder than I thought it would be. A lot of people have said my fantasy books are like thrillers, but see, with fantasy books, you can make stuff up. In the real world, you get called out on it was funny. My copy editor, I think Wanda. She's like, Jeff, there are no Chick-fil-A's in Bozeman, Montana. I'm like, there has to be. Check. No, they're not. So it's like, oh, come on. There should be. So I left it in there because there should be a Chick-fil-A in Bozeman, Montana. So there's reality of things are like, no, it takes time to fly in an airplane from this place to this place. You can't just invent a magical teleportation device to get somebody from point A to point B. So I found
that's so funny.
Right. I found myself more constrained by like fact checking things all the time and stuff like that. I thought people like when you go see a movie, are you always like, would it really take them that long to get there?
Yes. Yes, I am. Don't you do a lot of research on your fantasy? Like I do like an hour's worth of research on forks that they would use in medieval times. And my stories aren't even medieval. They're made up. Like it doesn't matter, but I'm still checking. Is that
I do research, and of course I was a history major, so a lot of that I kind of already know through books and stuff like that.
Cheating.
But having to research modern times and the different FBI titles and different things, I thought, having a story about ancient Mayan pyramids would be fun enough. I actually went to climb those pyramids myself, right? I've been to that land. I thought, and I was getting nickel and dimed by all the stuff in the United States. I got wrong. Sorry. So I don't know, maybe, but I haven't decided yet. My next series is going to be a fantasy series and in a new world. So
is this your mystery series? You totally tell me about that later, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll tell you about it later.
Okay, so another question. I'm by Brittany. I missed the Harbinger series. Do you have plans on revisiting it anytime soon? And can you just give everybody like a recap, Harbinger series?
So next to King Fountain, my Harbinger series is probably my second largest best-selling series. It's more of a Victorian vibe with manor houses that float on giant boulders and skyships and stuff like that. It's a 5-book series. So it's probably my second most popular one that I've written. And interestingly,
I didn't know it was the second most popular.
It is. And it's actually, it's coming out in France next month. So I have been working with the French publisher. And so the first book comes out next month and the second book comes out. So I've been working with them on how to translate some of my British English names into French, right? Because they're like, how did you come up with this? And it's like, I kind of have to explain.
I just made it up.
It's like, okay, it's kind of inspired by British. So why don't you do something similar in French? So working with them.
Do they have new covers?
Yeah. Do
you have any?
In fact, the book 1 cover, I do actually. They just sent it. They sent me.
Go get it.
Hold on 1 second.
While everyone's gone, we'll gossip about Jeff. Oh wait, no, he's back. Okay. I have glare. Okay, put it up close and go up and down real slow. It's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. It actually reminds me a little bit of Avatar, but maybe that's because it's on my mind right now. They're coming out with a remake.
So that's coming out. So back to Brittany's question, right?
Yes.
Do you have plans on revisiting anytime soon? Soon being the operative word, because I'm writing another series right now. I will answer that I do have some thoughts about extending the Harbinger series.
Different characters?
I'm not going to reveal, but I have ideas. And I've even talked to my publisher about it. but I don't have any solid plans because I've got what I'm working on right now. But it's possible that
Mm-hmm.
after this new series I'm doing, I might go back there, or I might do something else. But I've got this. I've got the nuggets of a story that I think would be very compelling. Um, so it's possible, but soon. I mean, what does soon mean? I write 3 to
Right?
4 books a year.
You
So
write pretty fast. You write pretty fast. You can do it. Okay, hold on. Let me see what else. I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Oh, you have a nice comment from Jordan. What I love about all of your books I have read so far is that there are characters that seem real and relatable, as well as the focus on honor and virtue.
thank you. That's kind of my brand, like,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of my characters and stuff. But I make really hard things happen to my characters. I mean,
Yeah, you're mean.
I think Kristin may have texted me in tears more than once over hard things that may have
I
happened to
am
me.
still mad.
But so hard things happen. It's not always like, yay, everything's awesome. No,
Mm-hmm.
hard things happen in my
Mm-hmm.
plots because that's life. That's
Mm-hmm.
reality, right? That's what we go through. But I am drawn to stories by characters that have to make hard decisions in difficult circumstances, but kind of try to do the right thing, even if things don't always work out for them. And those are stories that I've been drawn to, that motivate me. And those are the things that when I find them in history, that's what it kind of appeals to me. And that's what kind of plants the seeds that get the sprouts growing. So
That's what makes a good story. That's what impacts. Okay, one more Anchorette's question, then we'll move on to some other things. But okay, so how did you settle on Anchorette's magic? Was it character first, or was it the most interesting magic ability in relation to what was needed for the plot? Do you remember?
so long ago.
So you don't remember.
It,
I'm going to
it,
make up an answer.
I
Okay, go
know
ahead.
you would like to make up an answer, but for me, like I try. As I recall, I wanted her to have the coolest magic that I could think of. It's like what power would I want to have? Right? That I
Actually,
think would
I believe
that would
that.
that would that would benefit. I thought, why don't I give that to her? Because she's kind of she's the Obi-Wan, she's the Gandalf, she's the
Mm-hmm.
one who helps the protagonist in the book. And so, and she, it doesn't all come naturally. It comes because of the time she lived in, the politics and the backstabbing and all that stuff that's like the literal stabby that
Yeah.
happens in that world. That being able to know who you can rely on or count on or tell who might be about to betray you, what a powerful thing that might be to have a power like that. I would love to have something like that, and so that's kind of like, well, what would I want? Not just lightning fast reflexes. It's something that would be beneficial in the kind of world that King Fountain is.
Mm-hmm. And she does a really good job because she's not um, reading people all the time and in their private things. And she has restraint. And then also she must have a really good poker face.
She does. And I think, and we won't talk about it, but when she uses her power over a character, it gives her information that she suddenly wish she didn't have. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's like
Oops.
I tried a little too close, and now I'm stuck with the burden of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So magic can be double-sided,
Yeah.
double-edged.
Okay. So then we have one more question here, and it says, Jordan says, I backed your Kickstarter. Will you do more anniversary editions of your other books? I would love to see all of your books as anniversary editions on my shelf eventually. I support that. But tell us about your Kickstarter.
So this is the first time I've done a Kickstarter. It launched last Friday, so we're going on the first week still. We're almost 50% funded. But Kickstarters are stressful, right? Because, Jordan's question is, will you do more? Well, the answer to that question is the first one has to succeed, right? And what's hard about Kickstarters for authors and others that is like, we don't have access to our fans, right? I don't, it's like the fans that come visit me on social media, all of you that are watching this, if you come to my website and sign up on my newsletter, okay, I know who you are. But I have like millions of fans. I don't know who they are, and they don't know that this Kickstarter is even there, right? Because unless they stumble into my social media feed or happen to subscribe to my newsletter, they don't even know about it. And if the Kickstarter ends without it being funded, then it doesn't collect any money from anybody. And so then we don't do any more after this, because the publisher I'm working with, if we don't make the Legends of Muirwood Kickstarter work, then there's no motivation for them to want to do King Fountain next. So I would love to do for like all of my major series, for all of my series, really, if the fans want it, to have these collectible versions where it's just, has custom artwork for it and other things. So I'm hoping I do, but getting the word out there is the biggest challenge, because I would just hate for people to miss it that wanted it, and then all of a sudden it's closed and over, and they didn't have a chance to get it. So, this is why having everybody share as much as they can is helpful to authors or anybody doing a Kickstarter who doesn't know about it, because this is the chance. This is sometimes the only chance you're going to have to do it. But we're only not even a week in, and we're almost 50%. So we're confident that we're going to be able to hit our goal. But, I'd love to be able to do more.
So for all of your friends that are here, it would be very helpful if they just shared your Kickstarter in their social media and, just with their friends who are fantasy readers.
And I even changed my website. Like if you go to my website, jeff-wheeler.com, I have a Kickstarter countdown clock, right? Okay. So that way, even as people are coming for Widow's Fate, like, oh, what's Jeff doing next? I hope they're going to see the graphic and the countdown so they know how many days are left. And there's a link to the Kickstarter page there. So we're just trying to catch my fans in any way that we can. So it's the best, of course, is telling a friend about it. That's the best you can do, really.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so is there anything else? Because I know that you want to share about the Kickstarter, because I know it's the Muirwood series. It's 3 books. They're all going to be hardback. And you also have digital products. And you also have a novella.
Yes. So I had written a novelette that was a part of the original Legends of Muirwood. And it's only available audio and ebook, except through the Kickstarter. So the publisher is actually going to do a print paperback version of it as part of the Kickstarter. It's kind of a bonus thing if you do some of the tiers. So some people who don't want the, if you want to even have that in print, the Kickstarter is the way to get it. You don't have to even get all the hardcover editions in order to get that that paperback copy. So there's lots of different ways people can contribute and participate. You don't have to even get the full thing to help make us successful.
Cool. Okay, we have another question from Brittany, and she says, I was reading Richard II and Henry IV recently and noticed some similarities between them and your King Fountain series. Were they some of your inspirations, or were there other historical figures you drew from?
Really good question. And to those exact characters in history, the BBC did the Shakespeare plays on Richard II and Henry IV and stuff. And I actually watched those while I was writing the King Fountain series, because it takes place within the same century. And the BBC does such a great job in the costumes and things like that. So yeah, absolutely that period of British history was kind of my specialty in college. So you are not incorrect to see some of those connections that were there. In fact, there's a magical artifact in the King Fountain world called the Hollow Crown, which is a line from Shakespeare. So it absolutely, you look at the inspiration comes from lots of different things, but I definitely watched those, watched the enactments of those plays and got a lot of inspiration from them.
Cool. Yeah, I know you love the history, so that's cool. Okay, so Jamo, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, says, I love that you create books and worlds that feel like coming home. They haven't lost any of their magic to reread, re-listen to. That's a nice comment, a compliment, because a lot of times people will read a book and be done, and that's totally fine. But I feel like your books are ones that become the comfort reads that people read over and over again, even if
And
they
I
make them
appreciate
cry.
that comment. Thank you. When I'm creating my plots, because of my little twisty history brain, I put things in there that you're not going to get on just the first reading. So some people do. Maybe they can catch every little thing, but sometimes I have a nugget in book one that doesn't get revealed until book three. By the time you get to book three, you've forgotten it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go back and reread it again, all of a sudden that nugget stands out to you the second time. My fans call those Easter eggs.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, there it was right there in the first book. And I do that deliberately because that's the kind of thing that delights me as a reader, when I can make those connections that otherwise I wouldn't have found. And sometimes you don't get them until the second reading or so. So my books are actually designed to be read twice because you're not always going to catch everything the first time. And there's little details that are so subtle that they're not going to stand out to you necessarily the first time.
Well, and I would say the same thing about your Poisoner series too, is because even though you can read them all independently, the more they don't feel uncomfortable. It's not like, ooh, there's something here and I don't know what it is, but it's okay, I'll move on. Like, you literally, it's so smooth you wouldn't notice. And then when you're reading the other books in the series, or when you're reading this one, it brings other things from Queen's Poisoner or other books to the forefront and vice versa. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. Okay, so question. Can you describe a typical week for Jeff Wheeler?
Typical. My weeks haven't been typical lately, just because having 3 kids in college, 2 in high school, there's always things going on. Like tomorrow I'm leaving for state soccer championships, for my 2 sons. But on an ordinary week, I like to write on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I kind of have a set writing schedule. I kind of need that day off in between to be able to do that. Sometimes I'm writing a new world and I'm editing another manuscript that I've already done, because I've got multiple books in the pipeline at the same time. So
Will you do that in the same week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Will you do that in the same day?
Yeah.
You'll jump worlds in the same day.
It depends. Sometimes I can jump from one world to the next, but if I'm so that can be hard, right? Like I got to edit my book 3 of my thriller, and I've got to write a new chapter of my book 1 of my fantasy. And so sometimes I have to okay, brain, go back to the Yucatan Peninsula and Mayan legends. And what did you say? And so I have to kind of shift gears sometimes. Yeah. But because I have like 3 books in production simultaneously, I kind of have to do that. It's easier when I'm at the beginning of the series, because then it's different points of the same story. But when I'm crossing over and doing something else, it can be a bit difficult. That's why I'm glad I have a really good team. They help catch my mistakes. Like, oh yeah, you said this differently in book 1. You probably want to catch that. So having a solid team is really helpful. But yeah, sometimes I'll have that stuff going on at the same time, or a copy edit will come in, and it might take me a week or 2 to go through the copy edit, and that's done. But I don't want to stop the new series that I'm writing while I do that. So I just will do the writing in the morning, and I'll do the editing in the afternoon for something I've done before. And then I go to the grocery store and, things like that. I, like an ordinary guy, and, have stuff I got to do with, mow the lawn kind of things. So that.
But do you do that on Tuesday, Thursdays?
Typically, yeah.
Okay. That's just interesting. I didn't know you were jumping worlds in the same day.
Yeah, it can be. But see, my brain is very compartmentalized. So I can pull out the box that's Widow's Fate, go and kind of get into that mode, answer it, close the box, put it back on the shelf, and then reopen the thriller box.
Yeah, but how long does it take you to get into the new box? Is it like an hour? I mean,
no, not even that long.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, you're fast. Okay. So Jordan asks, we know you use history as inspiration for your books. Do you also put elements of your faith, religion into your books?
I do, absolutely. From not just my religion, right? I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I also have Roman Stoic philosophy. a Buddhist philosophy. I take
You do.
interesting wisdom quotes from wherever I can find them. And when I stumble across something, I'll make a note to myself because I think maybe I can use this quote or something there. So I have found those religious themes because, if you look through the history of the world, you'll find them everywhere. Those are the things that have just, been compelling to me. And so, yeah, I absolutely weave lots of different things. And so like my Dresden Codex, I did a lot of research on Mayan religion and the magic systems and things that were there, the shapeshifters and all the different things that were in there. And so that, to me, that's just fun. I love researching those kinds of things just for fun and as part of the world building that I do. And in my world building process, religion is one of the aspects of it, right? I like, okay, what religion do they have in this world, and how's it going to manifest itself in the plot, right? But I look at culture as well. I look at geography as well. There's many different vectors that are part of my world building process.
Yeah, like money could be coinage,
The economic, yes.
judicial system, food, religion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Food, always food.
Mm-hmm. It's important. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you've already had one of your books turned into a graphic novel. Are there any more in talks?
Yes. And I'll just because
Is that it? Should I move on?
No, because I think you'd like to hear this news too. So
I would.
I am actually in discussions. In this case, the artist came to me and said,
Okay.
I would like to do a graphic novel of King Fountain.
Okay.
And so we've been doing character sketches, just kind of looking at what could this look like and how would we want to publish it and how would we want to fund it and all those things. But for the last couple of months, like every couple of days, I'll get a new picture. One time it's Anchoret, sometimes it's King Severn. It's super fun, and so we're still preliminary. We haven't established everything yet, but yes, I hope. And one of the reasons that's motivated this artist to reach out is because he's a big fan of Lord of the Rings, the movies, and says like, I want to be one of the artists behind the TV or movie version of King Fountain. So I'll just take first stab at it, because if we can do a graphic novel, that would be easier for like Hollywood executives or producers to read that instead of the novels, to see the visual elements of it and be like, oh, I could turn this into a TV show. Yes. And so he wants to help because he thinks it would be maybe a logical next step of getting a TV show. And after the King Fountain TV show fell apart, and nothing's happened on that front. But now the graphic novel might be an opportunity. So it's still preliminary. You want to sign up on my newsletter to find out more about it.
Do you think you would maybe do another Kickstarter for the graphic novel?
If this one is successful, it would make tons of sense to do a Kickstarter that way. Okay. Absolutely.
We've never talked about this, but so this is a surprise question, and brace yourself, Jeff. But okay, so have you looked at other graphic novels I've mostly looked at graphic novels that are targeted at middle grade. So like Dogman, but also Dragon Breath, and several that Shannon Hale's put out, but they can be different. Like sometimes you can have a graphic novel that has some pictures, but then it will have like a whole page of text. So it can be text, picture, picture, text, and then, picture, text. So it can be a mix. It can be a mashup. Have you considered doing that? Or are you thinking straight, like color graphic novel?
We are exploring all options. We have looked at that thing as well. You can do an illustrated novel, right, where you have text and then fancier pictures every so many pages.
Yes.
Or like you said, there's some. So we're just exploring the different ways you can do it. I think graphic novels tend to sell better and sell more. But we're just keeping options open right now.
I'm a huge fan of graphic novels, especially if it's going to grab some of those reluctant readers, and maybe they'll be like, oh, I love epic fantasy, and then they'll jump into the full novel epic fantasy world. Be the bridge, Jeff. Be the bridge. Okay, so Brittany, I know you had mentioned before using Dungeons and Dragons as inspiration for your magic systems. Are you still a player, and do you still find inspiration there?
Oh, interesting question. So, am I still a player? Technically, I do play it on occasion, and mostly it's like during COVID, and we're all locked in our house together for months on end. My kids are like, Dad, we got to do Dungeons and Dragons. And so I made a campaign that lasted like 6 months, right? That was the longest one I've done in a long time. Occasionally, sometimes my kids' friends are like, hey, my dad's a DM. And so
I was going to say, were you the dungeon master, or did you play?
Always.
Okay.
I mean, I was a player too, but I was more intrigued by the storytelling component of it than I was being a player. To me, it just was more fun to throw twists and turns on the characters and seeing their reactions than it was, rolling dice and swinging a sword. So I'm actually part of a group that's going to be coming. There's a thing called Authors in the Dungeon, and they're bringing a bunch of fantasy authors and like D&D gamers and taking over a mall.
What?
And
where?
It's going to be in Utah in January.
Where? What city?
Provo.
No. Okay. Who's going to be there? Tell us all the things.
Christopher Paolini is going to be there.
What? Who?
Christopher Paolini is going to be there.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to be there. Jennifer Jenkins and Charlie.
I was going to say, is Charlie going?
Absolutely. So Authors in the Dungeon is coming in January, a live event. We're taking over the whole mall. So that's definitely a mix of, because there's fans in both segments, readers as well as gamers. And so I don't, Dungeons and Dragons doesn't inspire my plots so much anymore.
Right.
But it still is the elements of storytelling that still work. And the movie that came out, the Dungeons and Dragons movie,
so funny.
I loved it. It was so hilarious. And I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times because I normally don't do that with movies, but I was so enthralled by the character development and the inside jokes for the gamers, as well as the plot that was just right up my alley. So yeah, I'm still a nerd for sure.
They did a good job. It was one of those that you were like, I don't know. And then it came out, you're like, okay, that was a good one. Okay, so I want to go back to the mall. Who's going to be at your table? Do you know?
I don't know that yet, but I know they've gathered over 20 authors.
Okay.
That are going to be there. And so, yeah.
If Charlie is at your table, that would be
you'll have to come visit.
Yes. I'm like, that would be so funny. She's just hilarious. Okay, speaking of Charlie, have you read her new book?
I am in the middle of reading it. It's called The Hanging City, and if I check my Kindle, I'm about 75% of the way done. So I'm almost done with it, and I'm very much enjoying it. It's, she writes kind of romantic fantasy, and this is kind of a forbidden romance that's part of the plot. And I love Charlie's books. She's a great friend of mine, and when I got it, I finally got around to starting to read it and just enjoying it very much.
Okay, so Charlie, I really like about her, she writes, basically she puts a whole epic fantasy story and world and shoves it into one novel. I don't know how she does it. She's genius.
Well, we've been trying to break her of that habit of not just having standalone novels, and thankfully she's been listening, and she actually has some series now. So she's done her Numinous series, she's done her Wimbrel House series, which is one of probably my favorite series from her now. Of course, you probably know her Paper Magician series, but a lot of her books does standalone. But she's doing full, multiple books in series now. So
if you like a lot of romance, read Charlie. But I will say that I've been studying a lot more romance writing. And then when I was reading Widow's Fate, I was like, wow, Jeff actually is using a lot of romance techniques in this story. So And
I
I didn't
do
ever
that.
like realize that you were doing that, but there were a lot in there, and I was like, holy cow, I did not realize Jeff was levered. Like you are a legit romance writer.
Well, it's something in plots that I enjoyed from, Lloyd Alexander, Terry Brooks. It wasn't romance wasn't always the main theme, but
Mm-hmm.
always had elements of it in there. And that always, you kind of root for the characters, right? The ones you want to see get together. And
Yes,
so
you do.
and so I definitely like to add those things to my plots for sure. And you will find it in Widow's Fate as well.
Cool. Okay. So we're running out of time. So I want to ask, so I want to go back to Charlie, because I know you guys, she had mentioned you guys are working on a project together, writing.
Yes. So Charlie and I have, we teach at writers conferences like many authors do. And I got this idea when I was revamping my website that I said, most of my, I get a lot of requests for writer's advice and people want me to mentor them and things like that. And I'm like, well, just come to my classes, when I go to Story Makers or I go to Inkers or something like that. Well, that's the problem. I only teach one class a year at these places, and I've got like 6 or 7 different classes. I'm like, why don't I just put these on my website? So, kind of behind a paywall so that, instead of having to, pay to fly to Provo, it's like, you pay a couple bucks to, watch a class, recorded on a computer instead. It gives you a chance to get the content if it might help. It might accelerate an author's journey, right? To be able to learn some of this stuff faster than waiting 7 years. So once I got that idea, I'm like, well, if I have to build the infrastructure to be able to have these classes, then wouldn't it make sense to invite other authors to participate? So Charlie was the first one I thought of, and I called her up and she said, yes, absolutely. And so we've got like 5 of us now that are gathering together to create this part of the website called Writer's Block. Kind of a play on words, right? Because you get what writer's block when you're stumped, but it's also a block of writers that you can learn from, ask questions of, and be able to watch their classes. And so super excited. We've got Catherine Purdy and Frank Cole. And we just added Michael J. Sullivan's wife, Robin Sullivan. She's the business manager. He's a New York Times bestselling author, but she's doing a class on Kickstarters and Goodreads and publishing contracts. I mean, the business side. And I asked her if she'd join, and she said she would join. So Maria V. Snyder, who we also published in Deep Magic as well, she's joined. She's a college professor. So
I didn't know that. She's a fantastic writer.
So her classes are coming on board, and she does poison too in her books. So we've gathered together, and we're going to be launching probably in the next month or so. We've been in the middle of recording our classes and want to be able to have them out there before the holidays. So
I like that because as writers, it's expensive to go to all the conferences. And so I feel like having online classes from high quality teachers breaks down a lot of barriers and makes it more equitable for all different kinds of people from different backgrounds to be able to learn to write.
Absolutely. And and the business keeps changing. So what was good advice 10 years ago might not be good advice today.
Correct.
And so having stuff that's up to date, fresh, by people who are all best-selling authors, right? Like we were in the business. And so I think the advice we have to give is going to be helpful to readers. And I know some of my fans, they just want to watch the classes because they want to see what inspires me. Like, how did you come up with some of this stuff? Because I reveal some of that stuff in my classes.
Okay, so we are pretty much out of time. So do you want to tell people like where, if anybody wants to write a book, where they will be able to find it in the future? The Writer's Block? Will they go to your website and there'll be a tab?
You can go to my website, or you can go to the URL writersblock.biz, B-I-Z. And so I have that URL. It points to my website. And if I'll be announcing it through my newsletter. So just sign up on my newsletter, and I'll be able to announce that when that happens. And we're going to be offering discounts when we launch, so that people can try it out and get on board. So jeff-wheeler.com or writersblock.biz.
Cool. Okay. And then if anybody wants to follow you or they want to find Widow's Fate, where can they find that?
You can find, I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram. So come there, and Widow's Fate's available on Nook. It's available Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Kindle, Apple. It's basically any electronic bookstore or physical bookstore you can order it from as well.
And then on Facebook, do you have a private group?
I do. I have a street team on I call it my Muirwood street team. So
Okay.
I do that. Those are the folks get early copies that help me when I need help.
Okay, and then otherwise they can follow you on your public Facebook page, public Instagram, follow your newsletter, and they can find your book on Nook.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Anything else? I'm wondering, are there any other comments? Let's see. From Nook, it says, "This was so great. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. And thanks, Jeff and Kristin, for such an amazing conversation." Well, it was sparkling. Good job, Jeff. It was really good to see you. I haven't seen you in so long.
It's been a while, Kristin. Thank you for doing this. Bye, everybody.